Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Cynthia Gorig. We have some people who are signed up and on the webinar who have been in our elite community for a while. Welcome. It's nice to always have you here. I hope you guys are staying safe and doing well. And then we have some new people on the webinar, and we have opened it up to everyone over the last few months during this time, mostly because we wanted to support people and then also because a lot of people were home. And we are expanding our repertoire of webinars. And tonight, I'm excited. I asked David Stimation.
Hello.
He is here with us tonight. I asked him if he would do specifically a webinar with men and their emotions. For many different reasons. Part of it is I've seen some amazing results that he's getting in men reporting to me and their spouses reporting to me that the relationships are deeper and they're more connected. And so he's gonna talk about that. But this is also really important, especially if you are a male business owner. And I'm the CEO of Endomastery, so I also work with a lot of dentists. If you are especially a dentist, business owner, male, you are surrounded by women all the time. And one thing he's going to touch on is how do you connect and build trust and get a lot of respect from the women in your life. And I will tell you that you'll know when they don't feel you, or you'll know when you're not fully respected, because they will just poke you and prod you and figure out what's going on. And so I asked David to do this so that we could start to create some emotional intelligence and awareness. And for many of you that have been in coaching for a few years, this will just be a nice refresher and you'll get some very nice tips. And those of you who are joining us for the first time, more than welcome to ask any questions or connect with us afterwards. We have a Q&A box. Feel free to ask any questions and we'll answer them as we go. Okay, so without further ado, do you want to say anything before I turn off the camera?
Well, only that I'll be covering the topic of men and emotions, if that wasn't already obvious. And I will also have overlays about what emotions have done for me in my life.
Yes, and his relationship. Which will be very helpful. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off our video so that you won't be distracted by our beauty. And we will get started. So I'm going to turn it over to you, David.
Great. Thank you, Cynthia. Well, let's set up what the agenda is, or the main parts of our talk tonight, with men and emotions. First, we'll be using emotions to get what you want. And what I'm going to discuss there is about meaning and fulfillment, not what you want as in material possessions. Around the midway point, we'll discover and introduce you to the 5 core emotions that we use to get there. And then lastly, in closing, we'll celebrate and talk about the possibility of the 5 big wins when you, as men, use your emotions. I was a successful man with the outward trappings of cars, university degree, stable relationship, nice possessions, even a home. And outwardly, it looked like it was a great success and it looked like a happy world. But inwardly, I wasn't. And I wasn't very happy. It was fleeting. Inside, I didn't feel quite right. Something was amiss. I felt a void. And when I was trying to deal with that, I felt it was something that was impossible to fill. And I looked for answers. I looked for answers in self-help books, hoping for a magic bullet, one book, one weekend and get it fixed. Silent meditations, some of those lasting as many as 10 days, looking for answers. And finally, I would visit my alternative hippie friends and find out if they could help me fill the void.
I bet that was fun.
It was. They're a little more relaxed, but I found out they were confronted with more or less the same problems I had. They were great visits. So I wanted to give you an idea of what kind of seeking I was doing. And really what I come to as a conclusion here is I was using a Band-Aid for a condition that required a light surgery. and it required a different approach. And to sum it up, I felt heavy and burdened most of the time. So let me share a little bit about my story and just the big points. First, the takeaway. What I want to convey today is that I used my emotions to radically change my life. So I was educated in California. I had a good career in Silicon Valley, working for high-tech companies. I had material comfort and prestige due to this career in the places that I lived in San Francisco. But I also had a cultural curiosity that had me through different parts of my life, lived for long periods in places like Japan, the Netherlands, Central and South America, and I've also traveled extensively by car through the United States.
That car.
Yeah,
That very
car.
car.
That was the adventure car. That was the old Land Cruiser that I drove from San Francisco to Ushuaia, Argentina. So that vehicle transited most of the Western Hemisphere. Well, when that trip was done, I came back to the United States and I settled in Sandpoint, Idaho, near the Canadian border. And I now help Cynthia run in her legacy as the COO. So I'm in charge of a number of responsibilities here. I'm also an executive coach and a co-teacher when we are running seminars. So here's the crazy travel highlight. This is really all the photos that you see here. I had a dream in my 20s to go on a four-wheel drive adventure through Latin America. I couldn't even name the countries back then, but I wanted the adventure. Backroad travel, dirt, jungles, chopping through jungles and driving an old truck. Well, I put it to rest for about 20 years. And then in my early 40s, I got back in touch with that dream that was long forgotten. And I decided to leap, quit my great job, sold my loft, donated all of my possessions, and then I bought that truck in the photograph. And that led to a 3.5-year journey through Latin America, covering all of the Western Hemisphere except Alaska. It was an epic road trip, eye-opening, fantastic stuff. Well, after that, I moved to Sandpoint, like I mentioned. And here's where the other highlight is. I joined a men's group. And this men's group that I joined was about feeling better, personal development. It didn't have any basis or relation to a church or any religion. It was about guys that just wanted to feel better about themselves and find ways to help each other. So what happened here? Why is there an exploding heart? Emotions. This is all we did at these group meetings on Wednesday nights for 4 hours, was delve into our emotions when it was our turn or when we were working with other men. And I became a junkie because it felt so good. Imagine showing up at 6 o'clock for one of these meetings, tired after work, feeling flat. Maybe I had a bad day. Maybe I had a fight with my friend or something, or a parent. But I could go to that meeting feeling flat. And in the course of those 4 hours, enjoy such connection that I would feel energized and light as the evening wore on. And so by 10 o'clock, I would return home feeling hopeful, connected to others, but especially connected to myself. And again, that was through emotions. I've done this with 150 men to help them improve their lives, and they've helped me improve mine. In closing, I discovered how to use my emotions to know what I want. And I want to emphasize, know what I want. Often we say we want to get to knowing what we want. To know, excuse me, I'm getting that tangled up. Anyway, I'll summarize that one more time. Use my emotions to know what I want, not get what I want.
I have a question about the men's group.
Please.
What would you say when the men are coming in, like how big of a struggle is it for them to actually tap into emotions? Like how much time is spent on that, introducing it to them?
There's quite a bit of a challenge. I'll be frank about it. What we do as men is we tend to, and I'm still guilty of this myself, is a man will ask me how I'm feeling, and I'll go one of two directions. I'll start telling a story, and that story usually leads to some form of rationalization. And that's in a nutshell some of the tangles. So we'll always steer that man off of the story and his rationalization, and we'll really let him settle in on the experience he had and find out what emotional experience came up for him. Say he's angry or joyful about something. often we tend to sweep that aside individually. And we think, oh, the other people, they did that because they had to. And that's the rationalization. So it really comes down to those two areas. So just a little bit of practice and persistence, guys learn, oh, they slow down, they pause for a moment, they feel the emotion, and then they start to practice that in the sense of an emotional muscle, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like many of you, I bought into the stereotypes, and this is a story about who I was before. I was on guard, I tended to go it alone, and I was stoic. I thought stoicism was some romantic male trait. To sum it up in a little more detail, I was unemotional, moody, judgmental, angry, and I was withdrawn frequently. And my love life really wasn't very good. I had built a wall around my heart. And so for me, not knowing this resulted in me not knowing my purpose or my life vision because I wasn't connected to myself or my feelings. I tried concepts to overlay, but they didn't change or didn't result in lasting change because they weren't anchored in my emotional state. So many of you already have a clear purpose and vision in life. This is fine. This was just something that I was challenged with. So what I want to emphasize here, the things I talk about today aren't around purpose and vision. Is that you can use this structure and framework and emotional approach to figure out what your next big thing is, or to find flow that's missing, to have flow back in your life, or to improve relationships in your home. Now, if we pivot to who I am today, I have a bounty of good things going on. That's me in the cockpit of an airplane on the far left. I'm relaxed and I have found my preferred pace in life. I'm not rushed and harried anymore. And my personal and professional life are balanced. I'll share a few examples. My quality of life has become much richer when I'm in touch with my emotions, knowing what I want. And this has influenced my work-life balance. That followed after. So now I'm not in such a rush all the time, and I have a more pleasant pace that's richer and more fulfilling. The next one is I say yes when I mean yes, and I say no when I mean no. So what does this mean? I'll put it in a contrast. Many of us, including myself, I used to say yes when I meant no. And so I became overly agreeable with folks, and was saying yes when it didn't really serve me. I also share and express my love more openly than I ever have with my family, my friends, and my life partner, Cynthia. I have an open heart. I'm softer and more gentle. And this is a very self-fulfilling experience, sharing that love. Well, let's flip over to more practical things. In business, I'm better at managing the business with faster decision making. And my employees feel safe working with us. And I'm empowered. And when they feel safe, I've discovered that they have my back and they feel empowered to help co-lead the company. It was something I never imagined possible by relaxing and letting people see who I really was. So who I am is largely the result of getting in touch with these emotions that I'm talking about. So what happens when we don't know ourselves? When emotions are held back, stuffed, held at arm's distance, they keep us from having peace or inner peace. And so translated, I have turmoil. I'm angry, frustrated. Let's run through a few. Feeling anxious is an example of someone not knowing themselves, or wanting to flee when certain topics come up in conversation. Developing resentment, I actually call it hardcore resentment, the kind that's very hard to reverse. Flatline, such as monotony, not having passion for where you are and what you're doing in life. And unfulfilled, a feeling that something is missing. It might be vague or it might be very clear to you, but unfulfilled. Finally, And I was a champion at this one: withdrawal, shut down and check out, just to reduce the amount of stimulation or whatever I was trying to suppress.
Yeah, I think women, I mean, women especially, and goes for all over the board, but I think men have been more taught that this is kind of their style, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stoicism.
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're conditioned often by parents or society or school. You know. So what's the way? The way to freedom. Take this oil well. Think of it as all that pressure that's underneath the Earth's surface, this oil, a reservoir, this is tension and pressure. Now I want you to imagine that oil is actually not oil, but your emotions. And I'm going to use anger as an example. Often our anger erupts and it's not controlled. It just pops out suddenly and takes everybody by surprise, including you. And it takes over for a moment. And often it has the capacity to scare people. Now, if you look closely at the photograph, the one with the flames in it, those are my friends hiding behind the shield in the photograph. And the fireball, well, that represents my anger and rage. But you get the idea. I'm saying that in jest. My point being is this explosion or eruption is tough for everybody, including you. They're scared and you feel badly afterwards. When anger is expressed in a more level-headed way, it looks more like the image on the right. A mountain spring bubbling gently. It's softer. And when you're softer, even when you're angry, people can hear you. And so you can share your anger without feeling bad about it or having to say sorry afterwards. So I believe emotions, and I just use anger here as one example, that all of them can be used to feel lighter, happier, and less burdened.
So the difference between these two is like what you're saying is if you are suppressing your emotions, could be any, could be fear, sadness, could even be joy.
Yes.
You use the example of anger. So when you repress it, you suppress it, it builds up pressure because I mean, anything that you're not dealing with rarely resolves itself on its own. And so then if you continue to do that, there's a pressure buildup and it can just like come out like a oil well or like a geyser.
Yeah, an eruption.
An eruption. But if you make peace or accept or start working on identifying to allow this, then it can be more like a spring where there's just kind of ebb and flow and coming out. Okay.
Yeah, gently flowing. So it's just a metaphor that helped make the point more clear.
Okay, so if you have been on our webinars, we're going to do a self-assessment. And again, the self-assessment, this is for you. It's not a big deal. If you're joining us for the first time, I'm going to tell you exactly how we're going to do this. We do these self-assessments about a third to halfway in so that you can find out where you are. And the other part of it is where it's also a way to get you out of your head, get you into your heart. Some people call it your gut or your inner knowing, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it. So you will do this self-assessment. You'll do it with your eyes closed. You'll have a pen and paper ready. And I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and there will always be on a scale of 1 to 10. And when I'm finished asking you that question, the very first number that comes into your head without thinking, like in 1 or 2 seconds, you're going to write it down. If it takes you usually around 3 or 4, then you've already popped up into your brain and trying to figure out the answer. So again, just surrender over, and it's not a big deal. So I want you just to close your eyes. And don't worry about writing down the question. I will tell you afterwards what the question was. You can just write down your numbers. So I want you just to close your eyes and just take a deep breath and just settle in. Good. So first question, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being no, not at all, 10 being yes, absolutely 100%, you sleep deep and wake up rested. First number that comes to you, write it down. Second question, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all, 10 being yes, absolutely, you make decisions quickly. Number 3, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being no, not at all, 10 being absolutely yes, your employees trust you. Number 4, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all, 10 being absolutely 100%, your children feel safe with you. Next question, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all, 10 being yes, 100%, you're deeply connected to your spouse. And the last question, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all, 10 being yes, very high, you are great at saying no when you don't want to do something. Okay, so the first question was sleep deep and wake up rested. Second one was make decisions quickly. Third was your employees trust you. Number 4, children feel safe with you. Number 5, you're deeply connected to your spouse. And number 6, you're good at saying no when you don't want to do something. So that's just for you. The wonderful thing about this is if you have a low number and you want it to be higher, that means that you can see what's possible. You can see the possibility. So if you wrote that you're not connected, if you had a low number deeply connected to your spouse, that means that you want so much more there. So that's great. You can take that to your next coaching call or just bring it into your awareness. Okay, back to you, David.
Thank you. Well, what happens when we know ourselves? When we're in touch with our emotions, people feel connected to us. And I would also emphasize, in my personal experience, they trust you more. When you know yourself, these are some of the things that happen. Children thrive when they can feel the father that's there, who's in the moment, not distracted. A spouse who can come to you confidently, that they can feel good sharing something with you or a problem that they have with you. Or employees who love coming to work and are loyal. And in business, you'll make faster decisions, and I think this translates into respect in your business community or with your employees. Ta-da! Now the 5 emotions that I've been promoting so heavily in this seminar.
Yay.
So these are, right off the bat, let's just call it what it is. There are more than 5 emotions in the world. We all know this, but these are 5 core emotions and result as a great starting point for people working with them and developing their emotional muscles or strength. I'm going to walk through them. Anger. I think it's easy to find who that is on the page. Shame, sadness, fear, and joy. I'm going to focus on just 2 emotions, anger and shame. I focus on these because of the debilitating effect they can have on us. It comes from personal experience in my life and with clients that I work with. Now, most of us have been conditioned not to be angry. It's a bad thing to be. Parents tell us not to do it, or our friends don't want us to do it. But what happens is when we suppress it this way, it comes out sideways. And ultimately, on many occasions, it erupts like we talked about earlier. There is an alternative. The next time you get angry, do an autopsy afterwards and ask the following 3 questions. What does my anger want to say? What does my anger want to do? And lastly, the third question, and I think this is perhaps the most important question, what do I need? These will help you to transform your anger and help it come out softer next time so it doesn't hurt or scare people. So it is possible to have control of your anger, and it is a legitimate expression to have. And let's move on to the next one, shame. This is a nasty one, and it's the most toxic of them all. Unlike anger, shame doesn't usually get to meet anybody. You keep it all to yourself. In fact, you'll go to great pains to keep anyone from seeing the shame. And in the end, inside the voices that we have and the shame that we experience, we end up using it to keep ourselves down or from trying new things in life. Transforming shame is a straightforward action. Sharing it. Share it with another person to get fully in touch with it. Name the shame. Give it light by telling a loved one or a very close friend that you feel safe with. And gradually it does melt away. And keep doing this, getting in touch with the shame. Don't internalize it. And pretty soon you'll be replacing that shame ultimately with pride.
Yeah, it's interesting because shame, if you're not really connecting with what shame is that feeling that you're wrong, that you have been made wrong or you're doing something wrong. It's also that there's something that you're hiding. So it's something that you don't want to share, a secret, or if you've been humiliated or embarrassed. And a lot of times, David's really great at helping men let go of shame and transition into pride, being prideful and really stepping into their life. But you have to identify what the shame is, and there is a process of letting it go so that you can step into that next step. And like with anger comes up a lot of times when something feels unfair, unjust. And so if you're not connecting necessarily with the emotion, those will be the thoughts or the behavior behind it.
Great additional remark on the anger.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed that very much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we're going to do a worksheet. And as usual, this will be in your member site or it will be emailed to you, this presentation video again. We're going to go through this fairly quickly, but you can always revisit it. And we're going to do it right now. And so you'll just jot down a few things. We'll give you time for each question. Again, this is just awareness for you. So, first question, describe the quality of sleep, right? How do you sleep? What's the pattern? What's the quality? Do you fall asleep easily and sleep rested and wake up refreshed? Do you have trouble falling asleep, or you fall asleep easily but then you wake up in the middle of the night? Do you need a glass of wine to go to bed? What are your rituals? And then describe the quality of how you sleep. Good. And then tell me, what is your relationship with food? How is it? Is it rewarding? Do you have a healthy relationship where it's fuel and you appreciate it going into your body? Do you binge eat or not, or overeat, or you're not eating enough, or you beat yourself up? Describe in general, what is your relationship with food? Do you find it nurturing, or is it overindulgent or chore? Good. Now, how tight, burdened, or anxious do you feel weekly? And just kind of guess, what's the first number? About half the time, maybe, 5%. And then if you review that, is it only in certain circumstances? Or is it just kind of this cloud? Like sometimes we work with people and they become very anxious or burdened when they have to address conflict, and that's pretty obvious. Or there's kind of just this dark cloud that they can't really put a finger on. So just jot down a few key words and describe it. All right, now let's talk about you showing up with your children. How present are you? meaning you're focused on them, you're listening, you're curious, you're asking questions, you're not distracted, you're not on your cell phone? Or are you just monologuing or giving them direction or have an agenda? Describe how you are showing up with your children and the behavior. Perfect. Okay. Now, is your family happy to see you when you come home? A lot of times we get reports that, I'm just so tired and exhausted. I come home and I'm grumpy and I just need to be alone, right? How are you showing up at home? Are you looking forward to family time? How are they responding to you? Do you feel, can you leave your work at home so that you can be present in your family? Are you taking it home with you and it's affecting your family? Describe the dynamic between your family and you when you come home. All right. Monday morning, if that's your first day back to work, are you looking forward to it? If some people that, boy, around Sunday, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, it's like it starts to creep in that they have to go back to work. And if that is the case, like if you're looking forward to it, wonderful. I used to joke that Monday was my favorite day of the week because I got to get to go back to work. But if you are not looking forward to it, why not? What is it? And have you ever even allowed yourself to ask yourself that question? All right, and last question. Do you say no when you mean no? And don't just answer no. That's too many no's for that question. But, when you say no, do you really mean no? Or are you saying yes when you mean no, but you're just taking on more? And what is the quality of what you are agreeing to? Okay, great. So again, that is just awareness for you. And like all that, everything that we do with worksheets is what were your awarenesses that came out? What did you learn about yourself? Ideally, you discovered something that shed a little light on it. Could have brought up some emotions, but basically, if what do you want to be different? Like if you want a different relationship with food, the first thing is identifying it. If you want to be happy going to work, identify why you're not. And then if you are present with your children and you sleep awesome, then celebrate that. It's not about looking for what's wrong and what's right. It's just looking for awareness. And when something is not how you want it to be, let's create a new story and work towards change. When there's something that is exactly how you want it, you probably worked hard to get it that way, or just celebrate and be grateful that it's that way. Okay, so now we're going to continue on with a guided meditation. And again, if you know the drill, if you've been on here before, if you haven't, this is not a very long, deep meditation. It's simply more awareness. And this one, we are going to focus on helping you identify the 5 different core emotions in relationship with your physical body. And it's just awareness. If you feel anything, fantastic, you might want to write that down. If you don't worry about it. And afterwards, this will also be available, this exercise, in the membership site, and we'll also send it to you. So the first thing I want you to do is just close your eyes and sit in a comfortable position. Good. Now I want you to take a couple of deep breaths. slide out of your head into your body. Good. Now, in your mind's eye, I want you to bring up a memory or a situation where you were wronged. There was something unfair, something that made you angry. And boy, there's a lot of anger happening in our culture right now. Maybe somebody said something you didn't like. Maybe you were challenged. Something was unfair. I want you to bring that up, relive it, and as you're doing that, I want you to scan your body. Is there any tension? Any fire? And just feel this is anger. It kind of makes you want to do something, get back, make it right. Prove a point. Great. Now I want you to close that out and I want you to bring up another situation. And this is somewhere where you felt wronged. Maybe you made a mistake. You did the wrong thing. Maybe you were embarrassed or humiliated. You wished that it hadn't happened and that you could make it right. This could also be a secret, something that you don't want anyone to know. And this is shame. And scan your body. This is that feeling like I want to flee. I want to hide, or I've got to defend myself. Good. Now I want you to close that out, set it aside, and I want you to bring up another situation or circumstance. And this is something that you lost. Maybe you lost a loved one, you lost a relationship. This is that feeling of loss. Maybe you lost connection. And I want you to scan your body. And this is sadness. And just see if you feel any physical sensations in your body. Could be heartache, pit of your stomach, tense shoulders. And I want you to close that out, set it aside, and bring into your mind's eye something where you were either physically or emotionally attacked, where you felt fear, you were challenged. It's this feeling of wanting to flee, run, get safe. You did not feel safe. This could also be where a situation you were out of control, like a car accident or something that you just couldn't get a handle on. Another way to find your fear is, what do you closely control? Because whatever you're trying to control, there's fear underneath. And just scan your body, play out the situation or circumstance. All right, and then just close that off, set it aside. And then lastly, I want you to bring in something that you love. It's the kind of situation or memory that you just would love to do that day again. Or when you think about it, you have such fond thoughts. Could be the birth of a child, your wedding day, a road trip, a good cuddle session with a pet, something that just fills you up with lightness and love. And this is joy. And just scan your body, feel for any physical sensations. Good. So we're going to end with joy. And that is just basically like taking a little tour to help identify what emotions feel in your physical body so that you can relate to them and develop on it. It is just awareness. And then the other thing is to let you know that, we are manifesting these emotions at all times. It's absolutely 100% possible to tap into it. And you can just with that, just thank yourself that you went there, and you can open your eyes and come back into the room. Great. So I'm going to hand it back over to you, David.
Delightful. I did the guided meditation with you that time, and I always do something new and different. I feel really nice. Daily recap. Well, what is this? Well, we've covered a lot of things today around emotions and shared a lot of data points and many examples. So how can this translate into a daily practice, or for you to experiment and get more in touch with your emotions? And so I've created these over the years. And the first one is a daily recap. It's shockingly simple. And think of this as a place, a structured place to let your emotions run about. So at the end of the day, or if you're a morning person, early in the morning, but the point is when you're in a quiet, calm state, at the end of the day, do a daily recap. Pick 2 or 3 events that occurred that day at work or over the weekend with family, and take one of those 5 emotions and assign it to that event. And that's it. It's to reflect backwards on the day at an event and assign an emotion to it. And it might seem a little clumsy at first, and write it down or keep it in your head, and you'll find that it's really simple. And that's the whole exercise. Tell me more. This is another one I've created. Use the phrase, tell me more, and use it with your children and watch them light up. In other words, you fall a little more quiet, not telling them what to do or telling them to be careful, but simply say, tell me more when they're excited about something. Another place is with the spouse. Surprise and please her with, tell me more. And really what's happening here when you say, tell me more, as a guy, you are leaving Mr. Fix-It outside. No logic, no problem solving. Mr. Logic and Mr. Problem Solving, encapsulated as Mr. Fix-It. Leave him outside and watch what happens. I have a client I've worked with, and we discovered when he was sharing what his week was like that there was a pattern in the evenings with he and his loved one, a couple. And the story isn't important, but at the end of a long day, they both worked very hard and would return home. And there was a pattern where his partner, a woman, would say something to him, and he would offer a traditional or classic male response. I don't know, or a 1 or 2 word answer, but it really wasn't enough for the situation that was going on. So once we discovered this pattern, I said, well, the next time it happens, think about and slow down before you give an answer or blow off or not take the question seriously, and say, honey, tell me more. And he did this, and he couldn't believe the results when we had our call the following week. It was resulted in connection. And so what he discovered more detail about what she was feeling, and she was able to be fully expressed. And so that was tell me more.
Okay, and so just so I can be totally clear, so he says, tell me more. There's obviously tension, right?
Yes.
So she's upset in some way. So
yes.
She's upset. He said, tell me more. And did she have much more to say?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And then what was he doing while she was expressing?
I'm not on camera right now, but I'm making that universal zip. Zip. He zipped it. So he didn't really say anything.
That's a good answer.
No, I don't mean it in a mean way, like a parent saying be quiet, but he practiced not saying anything more. So he left Mr. Fix-It outside, didn't try to solve it. And that left him really with very little maneuvering room where a man is usually accustomed to operating. And so he said, tell me more a second time. And that encouraged more sharing.
And then what happened to the pattern, or what happened that evening that changed?
I'll paraphrase, there was love in the air, much different tone and temperament to their evening. And any possibility of a dust up or a conflict that like the ones they were having prior to that, that didn't happen that night. And so she was fully expressed, and it resulted, I think, at least how it was shared with me, is the two of them got to experience connection. And my client was shocked that that was all he needed to do. And he was actively listening. I'm not saying that you say it once and walk off. You might have to say it several times at different junctions in the conversation. So the other part that's really helpful is practicing curiosity and being interested in what that person's sharing with you.
Mm-hmm.
That was Tell Me More. Now you've noticed the theme here tonight, anger. Well, I'm going to talk about it again just a little bit more. The next time you are angry, do a debrief. I think I called it a autopsy earlier in the talk. Do a debrief afterwards with yourself and ask those 3 questions. I'm going to recap them here. What does my anger want to say? What does my anger want to do? And finally, and this is, again, I think the most important, what do I need? And the emphasis here is on need. So if you look at the title, the real phrase comes out much closer to anger is an expression of an unmet need. And I wanted to say that slow. Anger is an expression of an unmet need. When you take steps to get clear on what you need, you can watch the anger soften, subside, and come out more gently. You can still express the anger, but it doesn't come out explosive like the little cannonball we see here. What does that mean? Well, let's focus on the practice part first. Practice and conditioning your emotional muscles with these exercises will help you get more associated with your feelings. This is one of the big challenges for men. We are not associating with our feelings. So you can practice with these skills to get there little by little. And the real takeaway here is what you'll discover when you start getting in touch with those feelings, those emotions, is that they're telling you a truth or the truth. And it helps you make much better decisions going forward.
Yeah, so I would say men, if the women in your life, you feel tested, if you feel it's just not winning, you feel poked, you feel like you're being prodded, it's because your woman wants to feel you. She wants to experience you. And if you're not connecting with your heart and she doesn't know where you are, and I think you've said this before, David, like she wants to know you're alive, right?
So true.
And if you can connect into your heart on an emotional base, it alleviates everything. And it's not about fixing it, but that's one thing. If you feel like you are not winning, you're being tested, probed, or poked all the time, it's because your woman wants to feel you and she wants to feel your heart.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that with a metaphor. Think of a small bedroom has a certain amount of square footage and airspace, and there's a man and a woman inside of it. And inside that room is always occupied figuratively 100% by an emotion or emotions, feelings, connection. And what I've discovered, and I say this speaking from my own experience, is I didn't occupy half of the room with feelings or emotions in my past relationships. I would go off into a corner and play small. In other words, didn't communicate, withdrew, wouldn't share, wouldn't communicate or share anything that I was feeling. So what happens? If you use the analogy that there still needs to be 100% occupied space in that room, who's left to occupy it? Your partner, the woman, your spouse, your wife. And that is what Cynthia was talking about, the poking and prodding, is they just want a reaction to know you're alive and have feelings and that you're connected. And so part of the dysfunctional part of a relationship can be is if Cynthia wasn't feeling me, she knows exactly how to push my buttons, that she would start pushing them consistently and probably with a lot of pressure. And she'd be looking for a reaction. And it would often be anger in my case. And I would snap out. But she's getting her emotional needs filled in a really perverted way or perverse way that really isn't healthy for anybody. And so the idea is to adopt a more healthy expression between the two of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
This slide is called the 5 Big Wins, and I know you can all read that, but I imagine some of you have renamed it immediately with, it's called the arrow slide.
It's a lot of arrows.
If you pull this single slide out of the deck and make a photocopy of it or print it out, this encapsulates today's entire presentation, and I'm going to walk through it. When you express emotions, it's the first step on the path to inner peace, and that's the orange arrow going down directly. So when you express emotions, it's the beginning of you getting in touch with the inner peace that I think most of us all want, or eventually come to the conclusion that we want more of it. So let's return to the top. When you express emotions, we're going to go to the left. It gives you connection with people. And if that cascades downward, I'm going to split it up into spouses and children and employees and coworkers. So you have connection with those people in your life. Then that cascades down, and here's the specific examples of what happens when you express emotions with these people and create that connection. They know what you're feeling. There's an increased level of trust that they have in you. They feel safe around you. And here's the best part. You feel better about yourself. It's gentler, softer, more at peace on your inside. And that allows you to share more with people. And then that cascades down to something very important, sleeping better. Some people fall asleep instantly, but they arise at 2, 3, 4 in the morning with something rotating in their mind. Or there's the other person that isn't sleeping well. They lie down but can't fall asleep because they're ruminating or worrying about things. But when you express your emotions and have this connection with people, you will sleep better. Let's return to the top. And when you express your emotions going to the right, it gets you in touch with what you want. And then that cascades out into 2 critical areas, your personal life and your work life, or for business owners. Let's stay with the personal life. So I haven't expressed my emotions. I'm in touch with what I want, and that helps me say yes, or I'm sorry, I'll rephrase that. Helps me stop saying yes when I want to say no. And this is more in integrity with what you want in life. So you say no when you mean it. Then there's a life quality and a life balance. Could be anything from having time and getting clear what's important to you, pursuing an old lost hobby. Could be any number of things, but it opens up space is the point. It allows you to spend more time on what is important to you. Maybe it's family. Maybe it's extended family that requires travel. And again, the result I see here when people get in touch with what they want, they start sleeping better. Now let's return to the top one more time. When you express your emotions and you get in touch with what you want in an employment or work environment, and if you're a business owner, you are very clear about your mission and vision. And that helps employees rally behind it and believe in it and do things. You also results in happier and more relaxed employees if you're clearer about what you want in life and are able to express that through these feelings we've been talking about tonight. Another repetitive, consistent thing I see with my clients, faster decision making. If they're the owners of a dental practice or a small business, Large decisions left untouched or undecided upon languish, then the team actually starts to feel that they aren't being led. And so this results in faster decision making and stepping in, and the employees react and respond positively to this. And lastly, that builds on trust. Employees trust you for a number of reasons. They trust you that they feel safe at work. They trust you that you'll do what you say. Any example like that is suitable.
And when employees trust you, they become loyal.
Absolutely. This is loyalty manifests if that's in place. The challenge I see a lot is that an employer wants loyalty from an employee, but they're not willing to take any of the steps to create the building blocks for it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you see the pattern already. You sleep better. And all of that funnels into the inner peace that we're talking about. So when you express your emotions, that's the first step on your way to this inner peace. I started out with a personal story, and I'll end with one. A couple of months ago, I wrote this letter when I turned 55. And it's a good example of me sharing my feelings. What I've shared here on the slide is an excerpt, and I'm going to read a slightly longer version just so you have the full context. It's my birthday today, and I want to express my gratitude and appreciation for all the important friends that I have in my life. And over the last 5 to 10 years, I've gained and learned so much that's resulted in how in love I am with my life. Yes, I'm the one who did it, but it was done with your support. I feel both satisfied, self-satisfied, and community satisfied. I'm more awake to my world than I've ever been. Today, I'm as sure-footed as I have always fantasized. My confidence isn't a bluff anymore, and I'm a nicer and kinder man than I was. I want to say that again. I am living a life that I'm in love with. I shared this with my family and close friends. I've had time to reflect. And it felt wonderful to share that. And the responses that came back to me were very enriching, and I didn't expect that. Okay. Well, let's move to one of my favorite steps, the action summary. It's not much fun learning stuff if you can't deploy it, use it in some way. And that's why I've created these really simple ways to apply it and use it. So we'll recap. I've already talked about these at length. The daily recap. I've renamed it Your 5 Emotions. Do that and watch what happens. Tell me more. Practice using it with your spouse, your children, and in select circumstances, maybe an employee or someone that you work with. And then finally, anger. And I phrase it here as pause your anger. And when you do those debriefs I was talking about, it gives you a chance to pause your anger, get more in touch with the real needs, and soften it. Not stop it, but still express it softer.
Perfect. And also, as always, if you're in the elite coaching, take it to your coaching call. If you're on this for the first time, or you're new to this, please just call us or email us. We want to hear from you. We want to support you, especially during this time. And David has a real passion for helping men really connect with their emotions, because it really does increase their life. And I'm particularly attached to it because I've seen it really helps women. I mean, it really helps us understand and feel safe in relationships. So if you have any questions or you want to connect with us, just reach out. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I echo much of what Cynthia said, and I'll speak about it from my perspective. Is I invite you to get in touch with me or Cynthia if this is an area of interest. And often I have simple conversations that don't result in anything more. And I also do consultations during the week, 2 or 3, that for folks that are more interested in starting and want to know some more details. Real passionate stuff.
Great. So that's the action. And we have some upcoming events.
Yes, upcoming events. You may have noticed that our seminars have been suspended. This is obviously due to the situation with COVID. So they're that way until the COVID situation stabilizes. It doesn't make sense to have in-group live seminars at this time. Our private executive coaching program continues to flourish in the company and has for many years. And we continue to offer that in 1 year and 6-month accelerated coaching programs. And there's many reasons why folks do this, but two of them would be, in this case, people wanting to know themselves better and clean up old unhelpful patterns. Or for folks that want to create a living legacy, and I'll make an emphasis here, living legacy. A lot of us think our legacy happens after we're dead. This is about a living legacy and figuring out what's next in their lives and what they'd like to do.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. We'll just go back on video for the last little bit. Really enjoyable. I hope you all are doing really well. We're sending you lots of love. We want to hear from you. And next month, we're playing around with some other topics. I'm playing around with lead in the feminine. That'll be for women. And then David's on an anger focus. And so we might be talking really about how do we start identifying those unmet needs so that we can really, stop the oil field. But other than that, we'd love to hear from you. We love celebrations, stories, questions, and I hope you have a wonderful night, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good night.